So there's been a lot of talk on my Discord about what Loki's Dofru is going to be. I've heard various theories about Loki being some sort of chicken or a basilisk like the one that we see in Impel Down. And I've heard ideas of him being a dog over the years that we've been in Elbaf now. However, I don't think either one is going to be the case. I do think he's going to have the dragon fruit mythical model Nidhöggr. What do I mean by this? Well, first off, in Elbaf, thanks to the powers of Remo Shifu Killingham, we now see the various nightmare constructs of the people of Elbaf, and one of those is the Nidhöggr. And we have a few of them that are named, and I do think all the named ones might be important. But the reason why the Nidhöggr stands out to me is because it is the only nightmare creature that actually does something. Because we see it breathing this fire-like lightning at a giant of Elbaf. So it's weird that there's an emphasis on the Nidhöggr nightmare manifestation here, whereas other manifestations, even like, say, the storm or lightning, don't get the same treatment. So what I'm saying is that the Nidhöggr is the only MMA or nightmare creature that actually has abilities, whereas the rest of them just seem to be big, lumbering, giant entities. But to continue, so that's why I'm thinking there's a reason why this one in particular is made to stand out. Now, the reason why I think Loki has this Dofruit is because Loki is a child of the underworld. He was born in it and raised by it. So he metaphorically has been at the bottom of the world tree in Elbaf, like how in Norse mythology, how the Nidhöggr, which is represented as a snake or a dragon, is at the bottom of the world tree gnawing at its roots. On top of that, as correctly predicted by me 2 years ago, we do have a squirrel zoan in One Piece that is a hammer, and that is our Ratatoskr equivalent in One Piece. In Norse mythology, Ratatoskr ran up and down the world tree, spreading gossip between the eagle at the top and the Nidhöggr at the bottom. So we have our Nidhöggr most likely in Loki. We have our Ratatoskr equivalent in Ragnir. Who is the eagle equivalent? Well, I think the eagle equivalent is Biblo, because he's the most important bird character in Elbaf so far. He's potentially centuries old, and he and Loki, in terms of ideals, seem to be on opposite ends of the spectrum, because Loki, from various talks we've seen of him, is a Elbaf nationalist. He believes in the old warrior ways. He believes in strength over all else, etc. Whereas Biblo, even though he hasn't spoken because he's an owl, he is a symbol of education in Elbaf, the education that Harold wanted to bring forth because, of course, he is a resident of the Owl Library. Now, we don't know where he's from originally, so he could have been from the Heaven Realm of Elbaf, but now he resides in the Sun Realm within the Owl Library, which is adjacent to the Walrus School. So I think because of his adjacence to education in being in the Owl Library and being next to the Walrus School, he represents Elbaf's future, or at least the future that King Harold wanted to bring forth. So in that way, both Biblo and Loki are stark opposites, like the Nidhöggr and the eagle in Norse mythology. With that being said, too, the reason why I think this is the case, that Loki is a Nidhöggr and therefore a dragon, is because of something I like to call web theory, in which you take one character and you see the relationships that relate to that character and glean any useful information from those relationships. That's how I got to the whole squirrel idea for Elbaf, and that being we'll have a squirrel hammer, because in this web theory idea, I looked at Loki and said, okay, who is Loki related to? Well, Loki was arranged to be married to Lola, but when you look at Lola, some interesting things appear in her history, because we meet her in Thriller Bark, and she was the captain of the Rolling Pirates, whom were affected by the Shadow Fruit held by Gecko Moria. But the shadows of which possess the corpses to make zombies are the interesting part here, because the Risky brothers had their shadows put into squirrel zombies. So that's how I built a bridge from that point there, thinking that that would carry over into Elbaf and Loki would have some sort of squirrel hammer in the future, or there will be some sort of squirrel Zoan hammer in the future. So using that same logic, what other characters that surround Loki can we glean relationships from the past? Well, when you look at his older brother Haruden, he is the captain of the New Giant Warrior Pirates, but we meet Haruden in Dressrosa. Dressrosa itself is not important. The important part is how we get to Dressrosa. We get to Dressrosa because of a plan concocted by Trafalgar Law in Punk Hazard. And Punk Hazard is where the rub of the video lies, because in Punk Hazard, much like Thriller Bark, we get a bunch of giant lore and a bunch of giant theming, because of course in Thriller Bark we were introduced to the concept of ancient giants through ores. However, when you get into Punk Hazard, we get a multitude of giant lore themes that then touch other giant lore themes further out because of Caesar Clown and presumably the efforts of Vegapunk, because we know the numbers come from Punk Hazard, and we meet them in Wano as they are employed by Kaido, and they, like Loki, have horns because they are ancient giants, but Loki is a real ancient giant because of his heritage in having ancient giant blood. We also know that gigantification experiments were happening on Punk Hazard to those children conducted by Caesar Clown for Big Mom. So that connects Big Mom back to giants through Punk Hazard, and we know she has a lot of thumbs in Elbaf, the home of the giants. But then we get new giants through the employ of the Yeti Cool Brothers by Caesar Clown. We don't know what they are, but they are interesting. But in addition, we also see a bunch of supposed giant characters frozen in ice. So that's another point. However, we are also introduced for the first time to actual real dragons in Punk Hazard on both sides. On the hot side, we are introduced to the red dragon, who is named number 13, who is the bigger dragon. And on the cold side, we are introduced to number 21, who is the green dragon and is the smaller of the two. So like Dragon 13, could you behead that subscribe button and turn it gray? Hit that like button if you are enjoying the video, and ring that bell so you never miss a Poly Works video. In addition, if you could, please find that hype button and click it as well. It's very much appreciated. But to continue, but keeping the artificial nature of the numbers and the dragons in mind, I do think both of those are coming to fruition in being real concepts in the world during the events of Elbaf, because we are introduced to horned giants for the first time that are of the modern age in Elbaf right now, and Loki being the most prominent one. So I think Loki, in possibly being the user of the dragon fruit model Nidhöggr, will be the first real dragon to appear in the modern age in One Piece, because all other dragon fruits and dragon associated fruits don't actually turn the users into dragons. Kaido and Momonosuke are long drakes. The rest of them are dinosaurs of one degree or another, some drakes, others wyverns. And then we have a Kirin in Remo Shifu Killingham, which is yet another Drake. So the Nidhöggr is most likely a real dragon, looking at the nightmare creature that we see Remo Shifu Killingham make on Elbaf. And if Loki has the Nidhöggr fruit, he will be the first dragon in One Piece that is technically real. So with that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede Works.